Hello everyone, thank you for tuning in. I want to do a video that's a follow-up to what I had posted yesterday. So yesterday's video was just a ramble where I was putting different puzzle pieces together from what I've been seeing in the media with astrology, all of that. And now I'm actually pulling some cards. I want to scry into it and see what we might be able to expect on the other side of it. So first I want to say thank you so much to Santaro. Shout out to San because most of you are probably here watching this because of her. So I greatly appreciate that. And without further ado, let's jump into it. So, at the bottom of the deck, I have the King of Swords. And right now, I'm not really seeing this as an overall energy. I'm honestly seeing it as something that's almost happening outside of the story, as though this character, the King of Swords, has been locked out of the story. And the King of Swords, this particular King of Swords, has shown up in a bunch of readings that I've posted here. And if you saw the video that I had posted yesterday, I was mentioning that it seems as though certain factions within the proverbial they may have known how to override astrology so that it didn't affect them, but it would affect other people, right? It's almost like if you believe in the concept of karma, it's almost like knowing how to deflect karma, right? To somehow override the script while also creating scripts that kind of keep us in loops or hinder development, hinder progress, right? So that's what I think of when I see this King of Swords. I think of that, the proverbial script writer, loop maker, whatever you want to call this character. And seeing it outside of this spread, I like seeing that. And what's interesting is the energy behind it. So I have the Three of Pentacles. This particular Three of Pentacles always makes me think of like a deep mountain base, right? Like something that's been programmed into the foundation of the system, right? Very deep and hidden. And then the octopus behind it, go figure. And then the death card, right? So this I really think is just the spirit of the energy, right? It's like this is what's within this owl figure, so to speak. And it's giving me the energy of whatever this character is being locked out, right? Which is kind of like what I was saying yesterday, this sense that it's like if at one point in history people could override astrology and deflect things, I don't think that works anymore. That's just my consensus here. So let's jump into the cards that are on the table. So if I can pick them up, the first card I have is the Hawk and the Sea Serpent. And what's interesting about this Hawk card is that when it first hit the table, it gave me the sense of something coming out of a glare. So you know how if like you're staring directly at the sun, you might not be able to see a hawk that's right there in your field of vision because it's lost in the glare, right? So this hawk to me felt like something that was kind of emerging from that. And in particular, what I associate the hawk with is the same thing that you could call, elevated consciousness, right? Like a divine intelligence coming back online or something like that, which was very much so the same way that like the ancient Egyptians would have associated it, kind of, sort of. And it's interesting because the next card that I have in the spread is the cobra, right? So these are those two big Egyptian totems, the hawk and the cobra. And when I looked into this, because I had to Google, what's the relationship between the hawk and the cobra in Egypt, the hawk was always seen as a protective totem, as something that's kind of generally seen as divine, benevolent, of the good, yada yada. The cobra is the cobra. Nobody was dancing around how toxic, venomous, and dangerous it was. But it was the totem of the pharaoh, right? So imposter energy, people that should not have been where they were, right? That was their totem because this is, effectively their spirit animal, I guess. But they would also invoke the hawk for protection, right? It was that kind of side, but it didn't belong to them, right? This is more of an energy of something belonging to the divine, right? It's a benevolent energy. But I'm seeing this as, again, like this benevolent energy kind of coming online. What it's honestly reminding me of is if you've ever taken a hike and gotten to like a higher elevation, like say you're climbing a mountain or something like that, when you're actually at eye level with the hawks as they're flying, right? That's kind of what I'm seeing with this. That's literally what I'm seeing like with this, as though we've gone up in elevation or something like that. So now we're at eye level with the hawks and just beyond the glare of whatever it was that was shielding it initially. And because we're beyond the glare of it, excuse me, you can see the sea serpent card that comes next. It's as if the hawk can clearly see this sea serpent. But I'm getting the sense that it's like, it's almost as if the all-seeing eye itself was blinded by a glare. That whatever it is that was supposed to keep this place intact, supposed to keep this place healthy, was blinded. And there's a lot of mythology behind that in terms of literally being blinded and all different other kinds of things. But I'm seeing specifically in terms of like a glare, right? Like something kind of confusing the system. And you can see how it's almost like the serpent is around this eye, right? But what's fascinating is that this particular depiction of the Ouroboros, if you can see, the tail is not in the serpent's mouth. There's actually this little tiny gap that's right there. And I feel like that is something that's become visible. And the cobra itself is fully aware of that, right? It's like the cobra is aware of the fact that the glare has gone offline, right? That it's been locked out of its own system, whatever it may be, right? Because yeah, I'm getting a vision of like, imagine if somebody hacked a computer system and locked other people out of the computer system and had control of it, but then at some point they themselves were locked out of the system that they had locked other people out of. It's something like that. And on the other side of this cobra, I have the Ace of Pentacles, which is interesting. So it's almost like whatever it is that's at the center, this all-seeing eye, and excuse me, this Ace of Pentacles, it's like finally crystallizing, right? Because the Ace of Pentacles talks to me about something that presents as new, but it's tangible, right? It's not just potential. It's not just, hearsay or an idea. It's a tangible thing that has quantifiable data behind it, right? And hold on, I've scrambled all my cards. And the next cards that are coming underneath where the hawk is, right? So as this sharper eyesight comes online, right? This kind of higher intelligence comes online on the other side of, all of the crazy astrology that's happening. The next thing that we have is the Chariot, the Ten of Cups, and the Three of Wands down here. And I'm seeing all of these together. And the Chariot talks to me not literally about an automobile, but it talks to me about the vehicle, the proverbial vehicle that drives the plot or drives the narrative. It's like that's what the Chariot is. It's the hyper sigil or the thought form that becomes the manifested reality. It's the thing that bridges the gap from here to there, right? It's the story that you write, whatever it may be. But particularly here, it's like you can see that this particular Ten of Cups almost looks like one of those laser security systems, right? It seems like James Bond always has to go through something like that, where it's all the little laser beams. And it's bringing me back to what I was saying about this sea serpent, how there's this little gap in this like protective firewall, if you want to call it that, right? There's this little gap that could allow the all-seeing eye to see. That's interesting. But either it's like it works both ways, right? Because I guess it's like our eyes are the eyes of the all-seeing eye. I guess that's the best way to say it. It's like there's really no distinction, right? It's like I feel like all of our eyes collectively are the eyes of God, right? It's like God is looking through all of these eyes simultaneously. But there was still a blind spot. There was still a glare. And it had something to do with the energy of like the Ten of Cups and the Sun card, which is the other card on the table I'll pull in a minute. But both things that typically look very kind of joyful and happy ever after and yada, yada, yada. But it's like that is the glare that was obstructing the path forward, right? And again, it's like that. There's something about like our collective concept of happiness, right? Whatever story was written for us in terms of what happy ever after is supposed to look like, that was kind of built into the foundation of our code. It's like that in and of itself was a firewall, right? Because we know money doesn't buy happiness, right? We've figured that out collectively. But still, it's like there's so many other things that it reminds me of just like different achievements that I've had in my own life where I realize that we probably do so much of our manifestation mode work when we're in fight or flight mode, right? Because it's like when you're in your darkest hour, that's when you're going to be trying your hardest to change things, right? And typically it's like we experience that darkness because it's supposed to bring awareness to something, and then we resolve it and whatever. But typically when we're in that fight or flight mode and we do that manifestation, what we really want is just this kind of like plateau of safety or whatever it may be. And typically it is something very material that we're seeking to kind of remedy whatever the situation is, right? But it's almost like it's like there's a flaw in that or something, or at least there was a loop in that created like a lack of satisfaction, I guess, right? Because it's cups, right? So cups are supposed to talk about energy that fulfills. So it's almost like being given a type of water that could never quench your thirst. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's like whatever this thought form was, whatever this story was that was created, was like a type of water that would never quench your thirst. So you would constantly keep chasing on this treadmill because it's like it was designed to do that, I guess. And it also reminds me of, shout out to Lisa M. Harrison. Lisa has said, you know, a lot of our fairy tales and our stories end with happy ever after. But the story doesn't actually end with happy ever after, right? It's like what comes beyond that. And typically the Ten of Cups talks about that happy ever after kind of energy. And maybe that in and of itself is an aspect of what was blocking the energy, right? Because we do have to render beyond it. We do have to, it's like, you know, once Princess Belle and the Beast settle down, what happens next, right? Do they take out a second mortgage on their home and buy, you know, another castle by the sea? I don't know. It's like there has to be more of a story. And but also it's like, I guess the other thing in terms of most of the Ten of Cups that we're given, right? Most of the happy ever afters that we're told to chase have to do with some sort of external validation, satisfaction, whatever. And it's like maybe that in and of itself is the water that will never quench your thirst, right? Because it's like you have to find that internal satisfaction or connection or value or something that actually makes a lot more sense. But then I'm seeing again, so it's like once this crack in the gate is illuminated, right? Then all of a sudden it's like the story in terms of what to program beyond the happy ever after becomes clear and visible. And with this little Three of Wands, it's like making it through like the eye of the needle, so to speak. And what's interesting is that on the other side of that firewall, which was the Ten of Wands firewall, I have the Empress card at the center of the deck. And you can see that it looks like this illuminated tree, right? Like the tree of life is what it feels like right now. But on either side of it, I have this Ten of Cups and then the Sun card, which was, again, reminding me of that glare that I thought the hawk was finally being able to either be seen through or see through. It's like either which way. Illumination, but also clarity. And it's kind of like the idea of the tree of life becoming accessible again. And I had to think like what does that actually even mean? And my own interpretation of that story in terms of the tree of life versus the tree of knowledge of good and evil is that when Adam and Eve were first created, allegedly, I know we're just working with the story just to work with it, right? But they were given the task of naming everything that they saw in the garden, right? They were to give it its name, but its name was not just, oh, I'm going to name it Joe, right? Its name actually told you its purpose, right? So whatever the name of a particular tree was, that name would tell you everything about its growth cycle and what it does and how it operates and how it behaves. And it would be objective, right? There would be no subjectivity in that name. It would just be its objective truth. And because you had that name, you also had a degree of quote unquote dominion over it, but not in a tyrannical way, but think of it in like a Cinderella kind of way, right? Where, you know, the birds are helping you with your laundry and stuff like that. And because everything had its true name and they knew its true name objectively, they could interface with it. And that was having access to the tree of life, right? They were able to access, you could call it the green language or whatever. And I have this feeling that something like the green language is coming back online. Because if you've ever experienced any kind of, you know, psychedelic experience, you've probably familiarize yourself with what the green language feels like, right? When you can see trees communicating with each other or the birds or whatever it may be. And, you know, maybe at one point or in one way, that is actually a conscious experience that we could integrate safely into our day-to-day experience. But either which way, it feels like that's becoming accessible again. And the other aspect of that story, of course, is the tree of knowledge of good and evil, right? So what that talks to me about is subjectivity, right? So the tree of life was objectivity. You just give it its true name, whatever its purpose and function is. Subjectivity is value. Good tree, bad tree. You know, pretty tree, ugly tree. It's like as soon as that was introduced to the language, it's kind of like that's when you have that polarized split, right? Because in order for there to be good, there has to be evil. It's kind of that conundrum, right? But then that's the other aspect of the chariot too, is that the chariot usually talks about the reconciliation of the polarized forces, right? The alchemical wedding, where you take, you know, the masculine and the feminine, or the positive and the negative, and all of that, and you reunify it into, I guess, the God force, whatever it is that you would call it. And geez Louise, I've scrambled all my cards. And where do I want to go next? So again, it's like it seems like especially because of how bright this sun card looks in terms of the glare, it's like I can't help but think about um, that supernova that's apparently going to happen any moment now, and apply it to this, because a lot of people have talked about the flash, right? That there's going to be some sort of sky event and it incorporates a flash and yada yada yada. And I'm just thinking of it in terms of like the homeopathic principle where like cures like, where it's like somehow the remedy for a glare is a different type of light. But I'm confusing myself as I say that, so let me back up from that. But what's really fascinating is on the other side of the sun, on the other side of basically getting a glimpse of the tree of life again, there is the black egg card. And the black egg card, I might as well just read from the book because it's a powerful energy that talks a lot about truth. So it says, speaking from an authentic voice, the truth, right? So that voice, the voice that quote unquote commands reality, goes back to what I was talking about in terms of the mythology of the garden and the tree of life, and how when you have the true name of things, that you can actually speak to it, work with it. Because again, it's not about dominion in terms of the tyrannical sense. It's about co-creation, right? Where it's like working with nature to create a better experience for everybody involved. It says the black egg contains one of life's essential treasures, the truth. Inside of it resides no confusion, excuses, small talk, noise, or lies, not even white ones. This living and breathing vessel harbors only that which rings true. When this essence is in balance, we speak slowly and clearly. we're drawn to activities like writing, reading, teaching, singing, and perhaps even public speaking, right? So like a desire to communicate, but also to kind of use the voice to build the story that creates reality, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm sure we'd love to be able to turn certain scenarios on and off. And that's honestly what I think we're talking about here, going back to that King of Swords energy, right? Where it's like being able to override the scripts that have overridden us by choosing otherwise, but choosing all of the true paths that are available. So that's another way to look at the tree of life, right? Because I always associate the tree of life with the flower of life symbol, which is all of those different interlocking spheres, that traditional flower of life. And that to me has always represented like a map of the matrix, so to speak, where it's like all of the different realms, all of the different possibilities, even the ones that look just like this one, but they're different, right? It's like that's what that symbol represents to me. And that's also what the tree of life represents, where it's like this is kind of like the highway to get from one timeline to another, right? If we want to go back to the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once, it's like that map that they were using was what you would call the tree of life, in my opinion, at least. And and but again, it's like, how do you get anywhere if you don't know the true name of the destination that you're getting to, right? It's like there's something about that in terms of the black egg concept becoming clear, where it's like there's some sort of crack in the veil or crack in the programming or something that just like makes it crystal clear. Again, Ace of Pentacles, where it's like it's tangible, it's not a guessing game, it almost looks like a bullseye, right? It's like very much so that kind of energy. And what's interesting too is the next card after the Three of Wands, which was basically going through that crack in the programming, is the Son of Swords, which is also the Knight of Swords. But you can kind of see how it's like it's giving that serpent on the tree kind of energy, right? But it's no longer hidden by this glare. It's fully witness. And I don't want to demonize snakes, right? I'm sure there's good snakes out there in the garden. You know what I'm saying. We're just working with the poetry here. I feel bad for any animals that have been pulled into this, but I digress. What else do I want to say about this? So basically, any kind of untruths also get destabilized, right? So anything that is a lie, anything that's built on smoke and mirrors, kind of gaslighting, you want to call it that. It's like it cannot stand in the presence of the black egg, right? It's like once it's almost like the movie They Live, right? Where it's like the They Live glasses drop proverbially. and all of a sudden you can see what the signs actually are saying, right? Something like that. And that is what I'm seeing, because right after the Knight of Swords, which again looks like, the snake in the garden being exposed, and also because Knight of Swords can also be like a very impulsive kind of energy, right? And it's like this Ten of Cups feels like a firewall, and it's like I do think that there's a lot of things out there right now that impulsively are designed to look very happy ever after and very sweet, and then you move towards it and it just kind of drains your energy, right? Where it's like, I mean, take candy as an example, right? Where it's like it's an impulsive instant gratification kind of thing. It tastes like happy ever after, and then you feel it immediately thereafter, right? It's like it's things, silly things like that. But again, it's because it's not like we were being, because it's like you would expect the cloak to be something spooky, right? Where it's like, I'm gonna cloak this with a spooky energy. But again, it's like both of the things that look like are cloaking what it is that we want to move towards look good, but it's like it's hidden behind that. And maybe that's the intention, right? It's almost like what I was saying in previous videos about how it seems like we're all programmed to look for something in this matrix. So I use the analogy of a blue square, where it's like I incarnated with the intention of seeking the blue square. So things appear as that, and then sometimes those things are imposter things, because somehow the matrix knows I'm looking for the blue square and was trying to throw it off, but I digress. And then it screws up your intuition. It's something like that. But again, it's like once, what do I want to say? So this Knight of Wands was looking to me like, the snake in the garden being exposed. And the next card on the table was the dolphin. And the dolphin is talking to me about, very much so, those kind of psychic frequencies coming online, just because the dolphin talks to me about intelligence, right? It's like, I think the right term for all of this phenomena that we experience, whether we're talking about telepathy, clairvoyance, etc., it's intelligence, right? They're all just different magnitudes of intelligence, but dolphins seem to really have the greatest one. And specifically, dolphins' ability to sense births, right? I'm sure maybe you've seen the videos of like when whales are giving birth, the dolphins will surround them and protect them, but also the experiences of humans that have given birth surrounded by dolphins, and allegedly those children are like exponentially more intelligent than the average human being because of some, like, the noises that the dolphins are making as they circle. It's like, it's something like that, right? Where it's like the intelligence is increasing. And what's fascinating is that the next card, the last card in the sequence, is this Seven of Pentacles. And the Seven of Pentacles can talk about having a lot to work with, but a lot of overwhelming stuff to work with. But specifically, within the context of this reading, it's like it's looking to me like steps. And going back to what I was saying in the beginning about the energy of the hawk, how if you've ever taken a hike up a mountain and had the experience of being like at eye level with the hawk or above the hawk, that's kind of what this is showing me, is that like over the course of the last couple of months or years or whatever, we've gone up the octave, up the octave, up the octave. And now it's like high enough that we're finally reaching this black egg, because that's what was at the top of it. But what's interesting about this too is that each of these pentacles is at the intersection of a right angle, right? You can see like all of the right angles that are drawn on this card. And going back to the Egyptian energy, there's a lot of interesting Egyptian frescoes, like the wall art that you find in the tomb, that seem to depict people either teleporting or timeline jumping or doing something, but always going up at a right angle, as if the process of timeline jumping looks like walking up a wall, right? Because again, it's like that right angle kind of jump. I don't know how else to describe it, but that's how they depicted that kind of timeline jump process. And that's what I feel like this is depicting. I feel like, I don't know, that was so much information that just came through me. I'm like, did I say anything coherent, or was that just ridiculous? Is there anything else that I want to say about it? Well, yeah, I guess I'll end it on the sea serpent, right? So I'm saying that there's this crack that it seems like not only can the all-seeing eye finally see through that crack and see everything that's going on here and regulate it, but we also have the ability to see something. And what this reminds me of is during the big eclipse, which was April 8th, in the weeks leading up to it, I kept hearing that Aleister Crowley quote, which is, "Do what thou wilt be the whole of the law." And I'm not a fan of Crowley by any means, or that quote, but I kept hearing it. The day of the earthquake, so there was a big earthquake in New Jersey 2 days before that eclipse. When that happened, what I heard was that law expired. And when I say heard, I mean that was just like the thought that came into my head, right? That law had officially expired. Now go figure, that weekend happened to be the 120th anniversary of when Crowley went to Egypt and channeled the Book of the Law from some sort of God knows what extra dimensional creature and wrote all of those crazy laws that then eventually became, his religion or whatever. And my consensus was that that law had expired. So not only did the earthquake happen on the 120th anniversary of the channeling of the Book of the Law, but the epicenter of the earthquake was directly beneath where he is believed to be buried in Lebanon, New Jersey. So you can Google this, Aleister Crowley, Lebanon, New Jersey, Lebanon like the country. He is believed to be buried somewhere there, like literally right on the border of the Trump golf course, which is ridiculous. And what's interesting is that a good friend of mine who is a psychic medium traveled to that spot, not knowing that it had any connection to Crowley whatsoever, and did this whole channeling where what she saw underground energetically looked almost like this kind of serpent creature type of thing. Needless to say, after the eclipse and the earthquake and all of that, what I started hearing, or the thought in my head, was that do what thou wilt, be the hole in the wall, as though there was something in whatever it was that they had created, right? The system that they wrote around this place, the cage that they built out of thought forms and language and ideas. It's like there was a flaw in that had just opened up, that it's almost like when there's a technicality in a contract, and if you have a really good lawyer, they can find something that gets you out of it. It's something like that, where it was like one word, the tense of the word was just off enough that they could use that to unravel the entire thing. Interesting, right? Because here we are minutes away from the next eclipse, which is going to happen, I think, on October 2nd or 3rd. I can't remember. But we have that solar energy, right? The Horus, the hawk, is the rebirth of the sun, so to speak, right? And that's the idea, is that during the eclipse, it's like the sun kind of dies and is reborn or something like that. And then also this sun card here, which seems to be like the glare that is obscuring the map to the tree of life, if we want to call it that. So I have to wonder if the astrology of the next couple of weeks is going to be like Windex for the veil, so to speak. That's what it seems like. It seems like we finally acclimatized. We're going up these octaves, that we've reached a high enough height that we can finally see past whatever it was that was obscuring what we're looking for, right? Because that's it's almost like the thing that was obscuring the exit door, if you want to call it that. I guess that's the best way to call it, right? The paradise realm, right? Or we're trying to make it back into the garden, whatever language you want to use. The thing that was obscuring that, we're like this close to being above the glare, so that we can actually see what's happening beyond it, which is this system right here. Whew. So I think I'll leave it there. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you to everybody that's donated, by the way. I genuinely appreciate that. It means a lot and keeps this channel going. And if you're interested in a reading for yourself, let me know. We'll do a Zoom. We'll catch up, see what's on the other side of the glare for you. And other than that, I love you guys, and I will see you next time. Bye.